TJ, what about sticking with East Asia, Japan and Taiwan? Maybe they're so unrelated we should address them separately. But with Japan, Trump had this special relationship with Shinzo Abe, the Japanese prime minister, subsequently assassinated after he left office. But that's something Trump really needed in his first term, sort of like Bill Clinton and Tony Blair. Although Clinton had been in office for a couple of years by the time Blair came around. But this relationship that shows that you actually know how to do the foreign part of the presidency, somewhat of a foil to use against your unhelpful colleagues, counterparts, I should say, in Europe. And I'm not saying we should stick it to Japan, but it seemed like Japan got a pretty good deal. And it didn't necessarily bring down the trade deficit that we have with Japan significantly. Similarly with Taiwan, they're always like, oh, we need to support Taiwan. Taiwan is a democracy, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're Donald Trump and you look and you say, okay, our biggest deficit is with China, second biggest is trade deficits here, is with Mexico, then Canada. And I think Japan is next. And Taiwan is in sort of the top 6, 7, 8. Do you think that he is going to want to do something there, just also because he doesn't feel like he just had a good visit from the Japanese prime minister, at least the one that's there for the time being. But do you think there's change coming there too?
Well, we'll see. I'm sure he's not happy about the trade deficit. There again, I always kind of start with these. It's like, what do we think that there is to get? Kind of to this point that you made, Mark. There's a lot of people when you talk about trade act as if there's some huge pot of gold out there, and if we could only get tariff barriers, if we could only get, if we could zero out tariffs, that somehow we have this huge store of U.S. products that we're ready to put on take to the docks and put on the ships. If it was only because tariff barriers in Japan and other places were lower. That generally just does not exist. I can find very few examples of that. I've asked people, some of these trade associations and lobbyists, I've always said, the only place where it really exists is in agriculture. And agriculture is important. I'm from Kansas. I love the farmers. But it's not the whole U.S. economy. And if you think that there are manufactured goods, the manufactured goods that the United States produces essentially are tech products, some tech products, not that many anymore, but some, and airplanes. And generally, there are not tariffs on these things. So, to the extent that there is value for the U.S. in getting the Japanese to buy more products, I think it's going to be mostly in agriculture. There could be some regulatory things that we could ask for that might open up some opportunities for some U.S. service companies, but I don't think it's huge. I really think that with Japan, one of the things that you would maybe want them to do is get them to help finance the development of critical minerals processing in the United States or in another country where that's safe, where we could depend on a reliable supply. Maybe there's more on the defense side that you could ask for from Japan. With Taiwan, it's a different case. I think the Taiwanese could learn from how the Japanese handled the first Trump administration. And I always tell this when people ask, especially when foreign governments ask me for my views on how to interact with the Trump administration. And if you just look at the different ways in which people dealt with the Trump administration, some of them tried to sort of match the rhetoric, impose retaliatory tariffs, ratchet up the tensions. If you look what Japan did, Trump hit Japan with steel and aluminum tariffs, threatened to put tariffs on autos. What did they do? They did not retaliate on steel and aluminum. They accepted that they were going to have less steel production and they were going to be able to export less steel tonnage to the United States. They came in with a genuine offer on agriculture. We worked out a deal and we left them alone for the rest of the administration. So, there were no tariffs on, Japanese autos. I think to some extent, if people dig in and particularly if you look at the U.S. size, the persistent U.S. Trade deficit with Japan, it's kind of hard to justify why we would have to why we have less market access to Japan than say the Australians do. or somebody else that just does a lot less trade with them and has a lot. And you would say, well, Japan has a free trade agreement with Australia, and that's true. But if you look at the importance of the economic relationship, we're clearly a much more important economic relationship. So we struck a deal with Japan where we basically got most of the market access for agriculture that we would have gotten in TPP, not all of it, but most of it. And in exchange, Japan got peace, at least for the duration of the first Trump era.